have fenced my land to trap me, so I flew out in a helicopter to expose them. Watch the bold drama, like, subscribe, and hit the bell for our latest HOA battles and Justice Wins. I was sipping my morning espresso on my expansive estate in Willow Grove when I heard the clang of metal and the rumble of construction outside my property, a noise that made me, Malcolm Reed, pause mid-sip, because I wasn't expecting any work, especially not on my legally owned 3-acre plot in this upscale Florida neighborhood. So I stepped out to my front lawn, my heart sinking at the sight before me. A team of workers erecting a tall, chain-link fence around the entire perimeter of my land, effectively boxing me in. And I felt my blood boil, because this wasn't just a minor inconvenience. This was an assault on my freedom, and I knew exactly who was behind it, because there she was, Karen Bennett, the HOA president, standing at the edge of my property in her red blazer, her arms crossed, a smug smile on her face as she watched the workers, her blonde hair tied back in a severe bun, and I marched over. My voice steady but firm. Karen, but what is this? You can't just fence in my land. This is my property. I own it outright. What's going on? And her smile widened, her tone dripping with condescension. Mr. Reed, this is a new community safety initiative. We've had concerns about unauthorized access to your property. The HOA voted to secure the area. It's for everyone's protection. And I felt my fists clench, my heart pounding as I shot back. Don't give me that. Karen, this is my land. I've lived here for 5 years, and there's never been an issue. You're trying to trap me in. What's this really about? And her eyes narrowed, her voice turning cold. It's about maintaining Willow Grove's standards. Malcolm, some people just don't fit in with our vision. If you can't handle a little boundary, maybe you should consider moving somewhere more suitable. And there it was, the racism I'd always sensed, now out in the open. Her words a clear message. You don't belong here because you're black. And I knew she'd been waiting for an excuse to push me out, because I'd lived here quietly for years. A black billionaire who'd made my fortune in tech and real estate, keeping my wealth a secret to live a simple life. But now she'd taken it too far. So I stepped closer, my voice low. You're not getting away with this. Karen, this is illegal, and I'll make sure everyone knows what you're really about. And her laugh was sharp, cutting. Good luck. Malcolm, the HOA has the authority here, and I've got the community behind me. You're fighting a losing battle. And as she turned to walk away, I saw neighbors peeking out their windows, some with curiosity, others with smug approval, and I knew I was in for a fight. But what Karen didn't know was that I wasn't just any resident. I was a billionaire with resources she couldn't imagine, and I wasn't about to let her cage me in. So I went back inside, my mind racing with a bold idea. Because if I couldn't drive out through the fence, I'd find another way. And I had just the thing, a helicopter I kept in a hangar on my property. A purchase I'd made for convenience during my business travels. And I decided right then to use it. Not just to get out, but to make a statement. So I grabbed my phone, my voice steady as I called my pilot. James, get the helicopter ready. We're taking off from the estate today. I'm going to show Karen and the HOA they can't trap me. And as I hung up, I looked out at the fence, its metal gleaming in the morning sun. And I knew this was just the beginning. Because I wasn't just fighting for my land, I was fighting for justice. For every person of color in Willow Grove who'd been made to feel less than. So I suited up, my sharpest black suit a symbol of my resolve, and I walked out to the landing pad on my estate, the helicopter's blades starting to whirl as James prepared for takeoff. And I could see Karen and the neighbors watching, their jaws dropping as the chopper lifted off, soaring over the fence with a roar. And I looked down at Karen, her face a mask of shock and fury, and I smiled. Because this was my first move, a declaration that I wouldn't be caged. And I knew it would get their attention, because the sound of the helicopter echoed through Willow Grove. And I could already see people pulling out their phones, recording the spectacle. And I knew this was just the beginning, because I wasn't just fighting for my freedom. I was fighting for justice, for every person of color who'd been targeted in this neighborhood. And I was going to win, no matter what Karen threw at me next. The helicopter takeoff from my estate had sent shockwaves through Willow Grove, and Malcolm Reed, could feel the ripple effect as I landed at a nearby airfield, stepping out of the chopper with a sense of defiance that coursed through my veins, because I knew I'd just turned Karen Bennett's plan to cage me into a spectacle she couldn't ignore. And I was right, because by the time I returned to my estate later that morning, my phone was buzzing with notifications. Social media posts and videos of my helicopter exit going viral. The hashtags, hashtag helicopter escape, and hash Willow Grove drama trending as people commented. Who is this guy? That's the boldest thing I've ever seen. And Meo, HOA tried to trap him, and he just flew out. Legend. And I couldn't help but smile, because I knew I'd gotten their attention, but I also knew Karen wasn't going to let this slide, so I stayed vigilant. My security cameras on, my senses sharp, and sure enough, I saw her across the street, her red blazer as loud as her voice as she spoke to a group of HOA board members, her face twisted with fury, and I could tell she was plotting her next move. But I was already one step ahead, because I'd called my lawyer, Aisha Carter, right after landing. My voice steady. Aisha, the HOA fenced in my entire property, claiming it's for safety, but it's a setup. I need you to look into this. I think there's more to it. And Aisha's tone was sharp. I'm on it. Malcolm, I'll pull the permits for that fence, and I'll dig into the HOA's finances. If they are targeting you, they're probably hiding something bigger. And I felt a surge of hope, because I knew she was right. So I spent the day monitoring the fallout, watching as more neighbors gathered outside my fence, some taking photos, others whispering among themselves. And I saw the Garcias, a Latino family who'd been fined for their kids' toys, approach me. Mrs. Garcia's voice soft. Malcolm, we saw what you did. That was incredible. They've been after us too. We're with you. And I nodded, grateful for their support, because I knew I wasn't alone in this fight. And that afternoon, the first reporter arrived, a young woman from a local news outlet, her camera crew setting up as she interviewed me through the fence. Mr. Reed, your helicopter exit has gone viral. Can you tell us what happened? And I spoke clearly, my voice steady. I'm Malcolm Reed. The HOA fenced in my entire property without my consent, claiming it's for safety, but I've lived here for 5 years with no issues. This is about racism. They want me gone because I'm black, so I used my helicopter to show them they can't trap me. And the reporter's eyes widened, her tone serious. That's a heavy accusation. Do you have any proof? And I nodded. I'm working on it. But look at this fence. It's a clear attempt to isolate me. They're trying to push me out. And the story aired that evening. Willow Grove HOA accused of racism after fencing in black residents' land. The segment showing my helicopter taking off, the fence surrounding my estate, and my words echoing. And I watched as the story exploded. National outlets picking it up. Hashtags trending even harder. Comments like, "This is outrageous. Tear down that fence." And Malcolm's a boss. Expose the HOA pouring in. And I knew the pressure was mounting, because the next day, more reporters showed up, their cameras rolling as I spoke. This isn't just about me. It's about every family of color in Willow Grove who's been targeted. We deserve to live here without fear, without harassment. And I saw neighbors joining the conversation. The Wilsons, a white couple who'd lived here for years, standing beside me. Mr. Wilson's voice firm. We support Malcolm. The HOA's gone too far. This isn't right. And I felt a wave of support. But I also knew Karen wasn't going to sit idly by, because that evening, she released a statement through the HOA's website, claiming the fence was a necessary safety measure and accusing me of endangering the community with my reckless helicopter stunt, saying it violated noise ordinances. And I felt my blood boil because I knew she was trying to spin this to save her image. But the public wasn't buying it. The comments online tearing her apart. She's lying. That fence is a prison. And Malcolm's a hero. Fire Karen. And I knew we were winning. So I kept digging, working with Aisha to trace the fence's origins. And what we found was shocking, because her contact at the county office confirmed the permits for the fence had been fast-tracked with a $20,000 expedited fee paid to a shell company called Willow Safety Solutions. And Aisha's financial dig revealed the company was linked to a real estate firm, Pinnacle Properties, known for buying up land in upscale neighborhoods to develop luxury condos. And I felt my heart race, because I knew this was the motive. Pinnacle wanted my land, and Karen had taken their money to make it happen. So I sent the evidence to Aisha, my voice steady. We've got her. The fence was a setup. She took money from Pinnacle Properties to force me out. This is a conspiracy. We need to get this to the court, to the press. And Aisha's tone was triumphant. I'm already on it. I'm amending our countersuit to include conspiracy and bribery charges. And I've got a contact at a major outlet. They'll run this story tonight. Karen's done. And I knew we were close, but I also knew the real battle was coming, because Karen wasn't going to stop. Not until she was forced to, and I was ready to force her. Because this wasn't just about my land anymore. It was about justice. For me, for the Garcias, for every family in Willow Grove who'd been made to feel less than. And I was going to make sure we won, no matter what she threw at me next. While the helicopter escape had turned Willow Grove into a battleground of public opinion, and I, Malcolm Reed, could feel the momentum building as the viral videos continued to circulate. But I knew Karen Bennett and the HOA weren't going to let my defiance go unanswered. And I was right, because just 2 days after my dramatic exit, I received a summons to court, a lawsuit from Karen and the HOA accusing me of violating noise ordinances with my helicopter, endangering community safety, and defaming the HOA with my public statements, demanding $50,000 in damages and an injunction to seize my helicopter and force me to tear down any structures on my non-compliant land. And I felt my blood boil as I read the filing, because this was absurd. They'd fenced in my entire property, tried to trap me, and now they were playing the victim. But I also knew I had to fight smart. So I called Aisha, my voice steady. Aisha, Karen's suing me for the helicopter stunt and my statements. She's trying to seize my chopper and my land, but we've got proof of her deal with Pinnacle Properties. We need to counter this hard. And Aisha's tone was fierce. I'm on it. Malcolm, I'll file a countersuit for unlawful confinement, racial discrimination, and conspiracy. And I've got more. The financial records show Pinnacle paid her $30,000 in total, with emails promising her a bonus if she gets your land. This is a clear bribery scheme. We'll bury her in court. And I felt my heart race. Because this wasn't just a setup. This was a full-on conspiracy to steal my property. So I told Aisha, get everything ready for court, and let's get this to the press. The public needs to know the full scope before the hearing. And she nodded. I'm already on it. I've sent the emails and financials to our contact at the news outlet. They're running a follow-up story tonight. Karen's going to regret this. And I felt a surge of adrenaline, because I knew we were closing in. So that evening, the story broke. Willow Grove HOA president took bribes to seize black billionaires' land. The article detailing the $30,000 payments, the emails with Pinnacle Properties, and my helicopter escape as a bold act of resistance, quoting me directly. I'm Malcolm Reed. The HOA fenced in my land to force me out. They took money from Pinnacle Properties to steal my property. This isn't about safety. It's about racism and greed. And I'm fighting for justice. And I watched as the story exploded. Social media lighting up with hashtag helicopter escape and hashtag justice for Malcolm. Comments like, this is outrageous, arrest her now, and Malcolm's a hero, tear down that fence, pouring in. And I knew the pressure was unbearable for Karen, Because the next day, I saw neighbors marching outside the HOA office, the Garcias and Wilsons leading a protest, their signs reading, "Tear down the fence," and "No more racism." And I joined them, my voice booming over the crowd. Karen and the HOA took bribes to steal my land, to push me out because I'm black, but I'm not going anywhere. We're fighting for a willow grove where everyone belongs. Who's with me? And the crowd roared, their voices a thunderous wave of defiance. But Karen wasn't done, because that afternoon, she filed an emergency motion in court, claiming my helicopter was a public hazard and demanding its immediate confiscation, accusing me of inciting unrest with my false claims about Pinnacle. And I felt my jaw tighten, because this was a desperate move. But I also knew it wouldn't work, because Aisha was ready, filing a response that same night, citing the financial records, the emails, the pattern of discrimination, and the fact that my helicopter was fully licensed and operated within FAA regulations. And I watched as the court denied her motion, the judge's ruling clear. Mr. Reed has presented credible evidence of misconduct by the HOA. The request for confiscation is baseless. This case will proceed as scheduled. And I felt a wave of relief. But I also knew the real battle was coming, because the next day, a national news outlet ran a deeper investigation. Billionaire fights back against racist HOA with helicopter escape, revealing that Pinnacle Properties had a history of bribing HOAs to seize land in minority-heavy neighborhoods. And I spoke on camera, my voice steady. I'm Malcolm Reed, I'm a billionaire, but I chose to live quietly in Willow Grove. The HOA didn't know who they were targeting. They thought they could bully me out. But I'm fighting for every family here who's been made to feel less than, and the story went viral. Civil rights organizations like the NAACP reaching out, offering support, their statement reading, Malcolm Reed is a symbol of resistance against systemic racism. We stand with him in his fight for justice. And I felt the weight of their words, because this was bigger than I'd ever imagined. And I saw the community shift. More neighbors joining the protest, even Mrs. Henderson, who'd once sided with Karen, showing up with a sign, her voice trembling. I was wrong, Malcolm. I see it now. I'm with you. And I nodded, grateful for her change of heart. But I also knew Karen was desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. So I stayed vigilant, my cameras on, my senses sharp. And I told Aisha, she's losing, but she'll try something before the hearing. We need to be ready. And she nodded. I've got a private investigator on her. And the FBI's looking into Pinnacle Properties. They're facing charges too. We're close. And I felt a surge of adrenaline because I knew we were close. So I organized another community meeting at the park, my voice carrying over the crowd. Karen and the HOA took bribes to steal my land, to target us. But we're not going anywhere. We're fighting for justice, for a Willow Grove where everyone belongs. Who's with me? And the crowd cheered, their signs raised high, and I knew we were ready. Because this wasn't just about my land anymore. It was about justice. For me, for the Garcias, for every family in Willow Grove who'd been made to feel less than. And I was going to make sure we won, no matter what Karen threw at me next. The viral helicopter escape and the mounting public pressure had turned Willow Grove into a powder keg. And I, Malcolm Reed, could feel the tension building as the court hearing drew closer. But I knew Karen Bennett and the HOA were backed into a corner, and a cornered enemy is the most dangerous. So I stayed vigilant, working closely with Aisha and my team to prepare for the legal showdown. My estate now a hub of activity with laptops, legal documents, and evidence files scattered across my office, and the pressure on Karen was escalating faster than I'd expected. Because that morning, Aisha called me with a breakthrough, her voice a mix of urgency and triumph. Malcolm, we've got a smoking gun. Pinnacle Properties wasn't just bribing Karen, they had a contract. I found emails between her and Pinnacle's CEO. They offered her $50,000 to secure your land by the end of the year, with a bonus if she could get you out sooner. And they've been working with other HOAs to target minority landowners. This is a full-on conspiracy. And I felt my heart race because this wasn't just a setup. This was a calculated scheme to steal my property. And I could see the greed in the emails. One from Karen stating, "Reed's land is prime for development. I'll make sure he's gone. We can't let people like him ruin our plans." And I knew this was the proof we needed. So I told Aisha, "Get this to the court immediately, and the press. We need the world to see this before the hearing." And Aisha nodded. "I'm already on it. I've sent the emails and contract to the judge, and I've got a contact at a national outlet. They're breaking this story tonight. Karen's going down." And I felt a surge of adrenaline because I knew we were closing in. So that evening, the story exploded across every major outlet. Willow Grove HOA president took $50,000 bribe to seize black billionaire's land. The article detailing the contract, the emails, and Pinnacle Properties' broader scheme to target minority landowners, quoting me directly. "I'm Malcolm Reed. The HOA fenced in my land to force me out. They took money from Pinnacle Properties to steal my property. This isn't about safety. It's about racism and greed, and I'm fighting for justice." And I watched as the public outrage grew. Social media ablaze with hashtag helicopter escape and #justice for Malcolm. Comments like, "This is disgusting. Arrest her now." And "Malcolm's exposing corruption. Tear down that fence," pouring in, and I knew the pressure was unbearable for Karen because the next day I saw neighbors storming the HOA office in a massive protest. The Garcias, Wilsons, and even Mrs. Henderson leading the charge. There are signs reading, "Tear down the fence," and "No more corruption." And I joined him, my voice booming over the crowds. Karen and the HOA took $50,000 to steal my land, to push me out because I'm black. But I'm not going anywhere. We're fighting for a Willow Grove where everyone belongs. Who's with me? And the crowd roared, their voices a thunderous wave of defiance. But Karen wasn't done, because that afternoon, she made a desperate move, showing up at the protest with a local news crew she'd convinced to hear her side. Her red blazer pristine, her voice trembling with fake tears as she spoke to the camera. "I'm being framed by Mr. Reed. He's a billionaire trying to intimidate our community. The fence was for safety. These accusations about Pinnacle are lies. I've only ever wanted what's best for Willow Grove." And I felt my blood boil because I knew she was playing the victim. But the reporter wasn't buying it, her tone sharp. "Ms. Bennett, what about the emails? The $50,000 payment? Pinnacle's history of targeting minority landowners?" And Karen's face froze. Her stammering response cut off as the reporter turned to me. "Mr. Reed, your response." And I spoke clearly, my voice steady. "The evidence speaks for itself. Karen took bribes to steal my land. She's part of a larger scheme to target people of color. This isn't about safety. It's about racism and greed. And we're not stopping until justice is served." And the crowd cheered, the camera capturing every moment. And I knew we'd just dealt a fatal blow to her defense. Because the next morning, the FBI moved in, raiding Pinnacle Properties offices in a coordinated operation, their findings linking the company to a network of HOAs across Florida. And they issued a warrant for Karen's arrest on charges of bribery and conspiracy. And I watched from my estate, the helicopter still parked on my landing pad, as police cars pulled up to her house, Karen being let out in handcuffs, her face a mask of fury and defeat. The news breaking minutes later. Willow Grove HOA president arrested for bribery and conspiracy to seize land. And I felt a wave of relief. But I also knew the real work was just beginning. So I called a community meeting at the park that evening, the fence still standing around my land, but now a symbol of what we'd overcome, my voice carrying over the crowd. "Karen's been arrested, but this isn't over. We need to rebuild. We need a Willow Grove where everyone belongs, where no one lives in fear. I'm calling for a new election, a new board. Who's with me?" And the crowd cheered, their signs raised high. And I knew we were ready, because this wasn't just about my land anymore. It was about justice for me, for the Garcias, for every family in Willow Grove who'd been made to feel less than, and I was going to make sure we won, no matter what came next. Karen Bennett's arrest had sent shockwaves through the Willow Grove, but Malcolm Reed, knew the fight was far from over, because while she was in custody, the systemic corruption that had enabled her actions still lingered, and I could feel the tension in the air as the community grappled with the fallout. So I stayed focused, working closely with Aisha and my team to ensure our case was airtight for the court hearing. My estate a hub of activity with legal documents, evidence files, and laptops scattered across my office. And the pressure on the remaining HOA board members was mounting because the FBI's investigation into Pinnacle Properties had expanded, uncovering a web of corruption that implicated not just Karen, but several board members who'd known about the deal. And I felt a surge of adrenaline when Aisha called me that morning, her voice a mix of urgency and triumph. Malcolm, the FBI just raided the HOA office. They found encrypted emails between Karen and two other board members. They were all in on the Pinnacle deal, splitting a $20,000 consulting fee to keep quiet. And there's more. Pinnacle has been doing this in 5 other neighborhoods, targeting minority landowners. This is a federal case now, and I felt my heart race, because this wasn't just about my land anymore. This was about dismantling a network of systemic racism. So I told Aisha, get this to the court immediately. And let's make sure the press knows. We need the public to see the full scope before the hearing. And Aisha nodded. I'm on it. I've sent the emails to the judge, and I've got a contact at a national outlet. They're running a follow-up story tonight. The board members are going to crack under this pressure. And I knew she was right, because that evening, the story broke. Willow Grove HOA board implicated in federal corruption, probe targeting minority landowners. The article detailing the encrypted emails, the $20,000 fee, and Pinnacle's broader scheme. Quoting me directly, I'm Malcolm Reed, the HOA fenced in my land to steal it. They took bribes from Pinnacle Properties to target me and others because of our race. This isn't just about me. It's about justice for every family they've hurt. And I watched as the public outrage grew. Social media ablaze with hashtag helicopter escape and hashtag justice for Malcolm. Comments like, this is systemic racism. Shut them down, and Malcolm's a hero. End this corruption, pouring in, and I knew the pressure was unbearable for the remaining board members. Because the next day, I saw neighbors storming the HOA office in an even larger protest than before. The Garcias, Wilsons, and Mrs. Henderson leading the charge. Their signs reading, dissolve the HOA and justice now. And I joined them, my voice booming over the crowd. The HOA took bribes to target us, to push us out because of our race. But we're not going anywhere. Boy, no. We're fighting for a Willow Grove where everyone belongs. Who's with me? And the crowd roared, their voices a thunderous wave of defiance. But the board members weren't done, because that afternoon they issued a statement through their lawyer, claiming they were unaware of Karen's actions and accusing me of fabricating evidence to defame the HOA. And I felt my jaw tighten, because I knew they were trying to save themselves. But their words rang hollow, because the evidence was undeniable, and the public wasn't buying it. The comments online tearing them apart. They're all complicit. Arrest them too. And Malcolm's exposing the truth. Support him. And I knew we were winning, so I kept pushing, working with Aisha to gather more evidence. And what we found was shocking, because her private investigator uncovered a hidden bank account linked to the HOA, showing an additional $10,000 payment from Pinnacle to the board members after my helicopter stunt, a crisis management fee to handle the PR fallout. And I felt a surge of adrenaline, because this was proof of their complicity. So I sent the evidence to Aisha, my voice steady. We've got them. They took more money after the helicopter escape. They're all in on it. This is going to bury them in court. And Aisha's tone was triumphant. I'm adding this to the countersuit, and the FBI is already moving to arrest the other board members. They're facing bribery and conspiracy charges. We're close. And I felt a wave of hope, because I knew we were close. But I also knew the real battle was coming, because the next day, the court hearing arrived. The courthouse packed with reporters, residents, and civil rights advocates. The air electric, with anticipation as the judge called the case. Reed Viku, Willow Grove, HOA, and the board's lawyer went first, his voice shaky. Your Honor, Mr. Reed has caused unrest with his reckless actions. The fence was a safety measure. These accusations are baseless. But Aisha was ready, her voice calm but commanding. Your Honor, we have undeniable evidence of a bribery scheme. The HOA accepted $60,000 from Pinnacle Properties to seize Mr. Reed's land. We have emails, financial records, and proof of their complicity even after the initial incident. This is a clear case of racial discrimination and conspiracy. And she presented the hidden bank account, the $10,000 crisis fee, and the FBI's findings. And I saw the courtroom gasp, the judge's eyes narrowing as he turned to the board's lawyer. This is a serious accusation. What do you have to say? And the lawyer stammered, We didn't know, but the judge cut him off. I've heard enough. The evidence is overwhelming. This court finds in favor of Mr. Reed, and I felt a wave of relief. The courtroom erupting in cheers, the Garcias and Wilsons hugging me as tears streamed down their faces. And I knew we'd won a major battle, but the war wasn't over, because we still had to rebuild Willow Grove, and I was ready to lead that change. Menes, the court's ruling in my favor, had delivered a resounding blow to the corrupt HOA in Willow Grove. But I, Malcolm Reed, knew that true justice wasn't just about winning a lawsuit. It was about ensuring that the systemic racism and greed that had fueled this ordeal were dismantled for good. So I stayed focused, watching as the FBI's investigation into Pinnacle Properties and the HOA deepened, their net tightening around the remaining board members who'd been complicit in Karen Bennett's scheme. And I felt a surge of determination when Aisha called me the next morning, her voice brimming with urgency. Malcolm, the FBI just made more arrests. They've taken in 3 more board members on charges of bribery and conspiracy, and they've got a warrant for Pinnacle's CEO. They found a ledger detailing payments to HOAs across Florida. This is a full-on racketeering case now. Karen's facing additional charges of racketeering on top of bribery and hate crimes. And I felt my heart race, because this wasn't just about my land anymore. This was about uprooting a network of corruption that had targeted minority communities for years. So I told Aisha, make sure the court knows, and let's get this to the press. The community needs to see the full picture. We're not just rebuilding Willow Grove. We're setting a precedent. And Aisha nodded. I'm on it. I've sent the updates to the judge, and the press is already running with it. The board members are crumbling. 2 of them are turning state's evidence to reduce their sentences. And I knew we were close, because that afternoon, the news broke. Willow Grove HOA board members arrested in federal racketeering probe. The story detailing the FBI's findings, the ledger, and the additional charges against Karen, who was now facing up to 20 years in prison. And I watched as the public outrage grew. Social media ablaze with #helicopter-escape and #justice for Malcolm. Comments like, this is systemic corruption, shut it down, and Malcolm's a hero, he's changing the game, to pouring in. And I knew the pressure had reached its peak, because the next day the remaining board members resigned in a public statement, their lawyer announcing, in light of recent events, the board will step down to allow for a fresh start in Willow Grove. But I knew this wasn't just a retreat, it was a surrender. And I felt a wave of relief, because the path was clear to rebuild. So I called a community meeting at the park that evening. The fence around my estate still standing, but now a symbol of what we'd overcome. My voice carrying over the crowd of over 150 residents. Karen and the HOA took bribes to target us, to steal our land, but they've been arrested. The board's dissolved, and now it's our turn to rebuild. We need a Willow Grove where everyone belongs, where no one lives in fear. I'm calling for a new election, a new board. Who's with me? And the crowd roared, their signs raised high, the Garcias, Wilsons, And even Mrs. Henderson stepping forward to volunteer, Mrs. Henderson's voice trembling. I was wrong, Malcolm. I see it now. I'm with you. Let's make this right. And I felt a surge of hope because this was the unity I'd been fighting for. So we held the election that week. A diverse board now including me, Mrs. Garcia, Mr. Wilson, and a few others, and we got to work, rewriting the rules to ban discrimination, ensuring transparency, and using the damages to fund community projects, starting with tearing down the fence around my estate, a symbolic act that drew cheers from the crowd as the chain link fell. And we didn't stop there. We built a community center on the edge of my property, a place for all families to gather, with a tech lab for kids and a garden for seniors. And I watched as Willow Grove came together, the once divided streets now filled with laughter, Black kids, Latino kids, white kids playing together, their parents sharing stories at the potlucks we held every month, and I saw Mrs. Henderson there helping set up chairs, her voice soft. Malcolm, you changed everything. I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner. And I smiled, because those moments were the real victory, not just the arrests or the lawsuit, but the way Willow Grove had become a place where everyone belonged. And I knew the fight wasn't over, because racism doesn't die with one case. But I also knew we'd laid a foundation, one that could withstand whatever came next. So I kept pushing, using my platform to advocate for fair housing policies across Florida, speaking at state hearings, my voice steady. Willow Grove is proof that we can fight back, that we can build communities where everyone belongs, and we need to keep fighting for that, everywhere. And our story spread, inspiring other neighborhoods to stand up, to demand change. And I got letters from people I'd never met, Black families, Latino families, all saying, you gave us hope, and I kept everyone. A reminder of why I'd started this fight. And as for Karen, her trial ended with a conviction for bribery, conspiracy, and hate crimes. Her sentence set at 18 years, while Pinnacle's CEO faced his own charges, dismantling a network of corruption that had plagued communities for years. And I knew we'd won more than a battle. We'd started a movement. Onto with the corrupt HOA board dismantled and Karen Bennett facing a lengthy prison sentence. Willow Grove felt like a neighborhood reborn, and I, Malcolm Reed, stood at the heart of that rebirth, not as a billionaire seeking recognition, but as a neighbor committed to creating a community where everyone could thrive. So I threw myself into the work, starting with the new HOA board, a diverse group that included me, Mrs. Garcia, Mr. Wilson, and several other residents who'd stepped up after the arrests. And we met every week at the new community center we'd built. Our voices united as we drafted bylaws that banned discrimination, ensured transparency in every decision, and prioritized projects that brought us together, like transforming the park into a vibrant space with a playground, a basketball court, and a community amphitheater for events. And we used the remaining damages from the lawsuit to fund initiatives that had been neglected for years, installing accessible pathways for seniors, starting a tech mentorship program for kids, and launching a neighborhood watch program that focused on inclusion, not exclusion. And I watched as Willow Grove transformed, the once divided streets now filled with laughter, Black kids, Latino kids, white kids shooting hoops together, their parents sharing stories at the amphitheater concerts we held every month. And I felt a swell of pride because this was what I'd fought for, a place where my wealth didn't define me, but my commitment to justice did, where no one had to live in fear of offense or a fine. But I also knew change wasn't easy, because some residents, like Mr. Daniels, a longtime friend of Karen's, still clung to their prejudices, his voice sharp at one of our meetings. I don't see why we need all these changes. Things were fine before. Now it's all so chaotic. And I knew what he meant by chaotic. He meant the diversity, the inclusivity, the fact that Willow Grove wasn't his exclusive little enclave anymore. But I didn't let his words stop me. Instead, I invited him to the amphitheater's opening concert, hoping to show him what we'd built. And to my surprise, he showed up. his face tight with discomfort at first. But when a group of kids, including the Garcias' daughter, Sophia, asked him to join their dance circle, his expression softened, and he muttered, "Maybe this isn't so bad." And I knew change was slow, but it was happening. And I kept pushing, organizing events to bring the neighborhood together, like a monthly Willow Grove Unity Day, where families participated in activities like mural painting and community cleanups. The Garcias teaching salsa dancing, the Wilsons leading a basketball tournament, and we shared meals afterward, Mrs. Henderson bringing her famous apple pie, her voice soft as she said, "Malcolm, I never thought I'd see this. I was so wrong about you, about all of us." And I smiled, because those moments were the real victory, not just the amphitheater or the new rules, but the breaking down of walls in people's hearts. And we didn't stop there. I proposed using the community center to host workshops on racial equity and fair housing, inviting experts to educate residents about the history of discrimination in neighborhoods like ours. And I watched as minds opened, even Mr. Daniels volunteering to help with the tech mentorship program, his voice soft as he told me, "I didn't understand before, Malcolm, but I do now." And I knew we were building more than a community space. We were building a future, so I kept pushing, using my wealth discreetly to fund scholarships for the kids in our tech program, giving them a chance to attend coding boot camps and internships. Kids like Sophia Garcia, who told me she wanted to be a tech entrepreneur. Her eyes bright with determination, and I felt a surge of hope, because this was the legacy I wanted to leave. But I also knew the past wasn't entirely gone, because I heard whispers that some of Karen's old allies were trying to regroup, meeting in secret to restore the old HOA. And I saw a few anonymous flyers pop up around the neighborhood, claiming the new board was too progressive and destroying tradition. And I felt a pang of frustration, because even after everything, they were still trying to tear us apart. So I called a board meeting, my voice firm. "We can't let them sabotage what we've built. We need to show the neighborhood we're stronger than their lies. Let's organize a Willow Grove Harmony Festival, celebrate everything that makes us special, and invite everyone." And the board agreed, setting the date for the following weekend. And the festival was a success. The park packed with families, music filling the air, kids performing in the amphitheater, their skits about unity echoing as parents swapped stories over lemonade. And I saw Mr. Daniels there, helping set up a coding booth, his smile genuine as he chatted with Mrs. Garcia about her daughter's tech project. And I knew we were winning, but I also knew the fight wasn't over, because as the festival wound down, I got a call from Aisha, her voice tense. "Malcolm, some of Karen's old allies are trying to file a new lawsuit to reinstate the old board. They're claiming the election was influenced by outside agitators. We need to be ready." And I felt my stomach drop, because I knew what that meant. They were still trying to push us out. But I also knew I had the community behind me now. And as I looked out at the festival, at the faces of the neighbors who'd become my family, I said, "We'll fight them, Aisha. We've come too far to lose this now." And I knew we'd win, because Willow Grove wasn't just a neighborhood anymore. It was a movement, and I'd never stop fighting for it, no matter what came next. A year had passed since the helicopter roared over the fence that had once caged my estate, and as Malcolm Reed, stood on the stage of the Willow Grove Community Amphitheater, watching the sun set over a crowd of families gathered for the second annual Harmony Festival, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment, because the neighborhood I'd fought for had become a true symbol of unity, where kids of every race danced together on the lawn, their laughter mingling with the music. And I could see the changes we'd made. The park, now a vibrant hub with a playground, basketball court, an amphitheater we'd built, the community center bustling with tech workshops and equity seminars, and a mural painted on the center's wall, its bold colors spelling out Willow Grove, where we all belong. A far cry from the days of Karen Bennett's reign, when she'd fenced in my land to drive me out. And I knew this was the legacy we'd built, not just for ourselves, but for every family who'd ever felt out of place here, So I poured my energy into ensuring that legacy endured, working with the new HOA board to secure grants for more community projects, building a coding academy within the community center, a place where kids could learn skills for the future. And we expanded the scholarship fund, helping more kids attend tech camps, kids like Sofia Garcia, who just won a national coding competition, her mom hugging me with tears in her eyes. Malcolm, you gave her a path. I'll never forget that. And I smiled, because that was why I'd fought for the future, not just for my community, but for every child who deserved a chance. And we didn't stop there. We turned the amphitheater into a space for cultural exchange, hosting monthly events where families shared their traditions, the Garcias teaching salsa, the Wilsons organizing storytelling nights, and we invited speakers to educate residents about the history of housing discrimination. And I watched as minds opened, even Mr. Daniels, who'd once resisted change, now leading a tech workshop for teens, his voice soft as he told me, I was wrong, Malcolm. You showed me what community really means. And I felt a lump in my throat, because those moments were the real victory, not just the amphitheater or the new rules, but the way Willow Grove had become a place where people truly saw each other. And we held the Harmony Festival to celebrate. The park packed with families, music filling the air, kids performing skits about unity on the stage, their voices echoing as parents swapped stories over lemonade. And I watched as families who'd once lived in fear of fines now danced together under the stars. Sofia Garcia and the Wilson kids racing through the crowd, their laughter a reminder of what we'd achieved. But I also knew the fight wasn't over, because racism doesn't disappear overnight. And I heard whispers of new residents moving in, some bringing old prejudices with them. But I also saw hope, in the way the kids coded together without fear, in the way Mrs. Henderson now organized cultural nights, her smile genuine as she said, I want to give back, Malcolm. You taught me how. And I knew those small acts of change were the foundation of something bigger. So I kept pushing, using my platform to advocate for fair housing policies across Florida, speaking at state hearings, my voice steady as I told our story. Willow Grove is proof that we can fight back, that we can build communities where everyone belongs, where diversity isn't feared but celebrated. And we need to keep fighting for that everywhere. And our story spread, inspiring other neighborhoods to stand up, to demand change. And I got letters from people I'd never met, Black families, Latino families, all saying, you gave us hope. And I kept every one, a reminder of why I had started this fight. And as for Karen and her allies, their final lawsuit to reinstate the old board failed, the court dismissing their claims as baseless. And Karen's federal trial ended with a conviction for bribery, conspiracy, and hate crimes. Her sentence set at 18 years, while Pinnacle Properties' CEO faced his own charges, dismantling a network of corruption that had targeted minority communities for years. And Karen's house was sold to a young Black family with 3 kids, and I saw neighbors help them unpack. A sight that made my heart swell, because this was the Willow Grove I'd always wanted, a place where no one was pushed out, where inclusivity was the norm. And on the anniversary of my helicopter escape, we held a ceremony at the amphitheater, unveiling a plaque that read, in honor of Malcolm Reed, who soared above hate to build a home for all. And I stood at the podium, my voice steady. A year ago, I flew over a fence meant to cage me. But today, we stand here, united, a symbol of what's possible when we fight for justice. Willow Grove isn't perfect, but it's ours, and we'll keep making it better, together. And the crowd cheered, Sofia Garcia running up to hug me, her smile brighter than the sun. And as I looked out at the faces, Black, Latino, white, all part of this new Willow Grove, I thought about Karen, now a footnote in our history, her dreams of division shattered. And I didn't feel vindictive. I felt at peace, because the real victory wasn't in her downfall. It was in the thriving community she tried to destroy. And as the festival wound down, I sat with Mrs. Garcia, her voice soft. Malcolm, You changed everything. You showed us what we could be. And I smiled, because I knew she was right. But I also knew it wasn't just me. It was all of us, fighting together. And as I watched the last of the sunset fade, I knew Willow Grove would never be the same. And neither would I. Because this fight had taught me that true change starts with standing up, with refusing to be silenced. And I'd never stop standing up for my community, for a world where everyone belongs. Malcolm flew a helicopter to expose the HOA's plot, won justice, and united Willow Grove for equality. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe if you love this story. Hit the bell for our latest videos on HOA dramas and community triumphs. You won't want to miss what's next.